Okay, Chairman, we are now live. Over to you. Thank you.
Welcome to a virtual meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee of the London Borough of Hillingdon. This virtual meeting is also being broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon London. My name is Councillor Labour and I'm the chairman of this meeting. I will do the usual online housekeeping. Please ensure any mobile phones around you are on silent. If you're wearing a headset, please ensure the microphone is away from your mouth to avoid noise. Please keep microphones muted when you're not speaking, then unmute them to speak. Only one person at a time may speak, and I, as chairman, will call those to speak. I now need to do the attendance roll, so if you can all just confirm you're present when I call your name. Councillor Tuckwell.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duncan.
Present.
Councillor Morgan.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Morse.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Melvin.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Hagger.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Sansapori. Councillor Sansapori, if you could hear me, could you just take your phone off mute?
Yes, present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, that's all members present. And I just checked the officer team for tonight. The planning officer, Mandeep Malhotra.
Present, Chairman.
Head of planning, James Roger.
I'm present, Chairman.
Democratic Services Officer and Clerk, Neil Fraser.
Present, Chairman.
Legal Advisor, Glenn Egan.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. The usual reminder.
Chairman, to interrupt. We also have Alan Tilley.
Present, Chairman.
Yes, who wasn't on your list.
No, apologies.
Hence why I did remember. Sorry, Alan. In terms of technical meeting control, if any councillor leaves the virtual meeting partway through for a lost connection or any other reason, I will continue the meeting as long as I am quorate with 3 councillors. But of course, in accordance with normal rules, if you're not present for the whole of an item, you may not vote. Having just checked attendance, we have no apologies for absence tonight. I'm not aware of any declarations of interest, but if I'll just hold now in case anybody wishes to declare anything. Nobody's indicating, so I will take that as none. In your papers, you had minutes from the meeting of the 7th of May, our first virtual meeting, and also the minutes of the virtual meeting on the 14th of May. Unless anybody disagrees, can I take those as agreed now? No hands, so I'll agree those. The agenda we are taking tonight is the one that was published by the head of planning with items 6 to 13 on it. They're all in part 1. They're all in public. So there are no private matters tonight. Right, I will now move to item 6, 20 to 30 Blythe Road, Hayes. Mandit, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will just share the presentation with everybody. Can everybody see that? It's not, yes, perfect. Okay, agenda item number 6 is 20 to 30 Blythe Road in Hayes. The application site is located across the road from Hayes and Harlington Station, which on this constraints plan is showed in the darker red colour. The application site is probably more familiarly known locally as the Paradigm Housing site, which has been under construction for some time. The application seeks a variation of planning conditions which were attached to the original permission for a Part 11, Part 9 and Part 5 and 4-storey building, which comprised of a mixed-use residential-led development. The application was previously presented to the Major Applications Planning Committee on the 30th of January 2019. The committee resolved to approve the application subject to a deed of variation. Prior to the completion of the legal agreement, unfortunately, there was a Court of Appeal ruling that resulted in the need for the council to reassess and reconsult on the proposals to ensure that any decision notice that we issued was valid and sound. That has now taken place, and therefore the application is before members for a further resolution to approve. The application before members is in all other respects the same as the one previously presented. For that reason, I'll take you through a few plans, but the application is recommended for approval. The previous decision was the omission of one of the car park stackers and the relocation of another. So this is one of the car park stacker plans, Plan A. This is a waste management plan. So one of the other variations sought was to amend the way in which refuse was being collected at the site. And then there are a few photographs of the application site, which is currently under construction. I believe these are a little old, so the building has progressed slightly further than this, but the application is recommended for approval. I will hand back to Councillor Lavery.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Can you just confirm for me that this is exactly the same as the one we looked at in January? It's just the legal rulings made it come back.
I can confirm that's the reason.
Okay. On the basis that we've already approved this and it's essentially a technical matter, does anybody wish to add anything, or can I just get a proposal and second to remove this? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Tuckwell, I've just seen indicate. So Councillor Duncan first.
I'm very happy with this. We've already approved it. I propose that we accept the officer's recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Tuckwell.
Happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. There's nobody else I can see indicating, and it is, as I say, a technical matter. So in that case, we will move to the vote. So all those voting, please indicate we're voting for or against. Councillor Tuckwell?
For.
Councillor Duncan proposed, so I'm going to take you as for.
Yes, for, Chairman.
Councillor Morgan?
For.
Councillor Morse?
For.
Councillor Higgins?
For.
Councillor Melvin?
Yes, for, Chairman.
Councillor Hagger?
For.
Councillor Sansapuri?
For.
A modification to an S106. And I must admit, I wrote on my notes, it sounds like a legal matter, but I'm sure Mandy will explain.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the presentation has been shared with everyone. So item number 7 is number 30 to 32 Blythe Road, which is the Bellway development, which is next door to the Paradigm site. So they are neighbours, effectively. The application is indeed for a legal variation to the affordable housing schedule. This slide sets out what those amendments are for. We've seen a few of these in the past, and I'd like to refer to them as administrative corrections. They are not changing in any way the affordable housing that the application delivered under the original consent in terms of its quantum and also its tenure delivery. I believe this is a requirement in order to allow the developers to sell to third parties. There has been no objection raised by the legal team or by the council's section 106 and infrastructure manager. This is a photograph of the application site itself. Oh, apologies. And the application is recommended for approval. I will hand back to Councillor Lavery.
Does anybody have anything to raise on this one? It is technical, and the officers have confirmed it doesn't actually affect the quantum or delivery of the affordable housing, which I think is the most important. But Councillor Duncan, then Councillor Tuckwell.
I'd just like to ask Mandy what sale to third parties means, because if this is by, is it Paradigm, did you say?
Bellway.
Bellway, sorry. So how does that relate to affordable housing then? Are they going to be the social landlord, or does it mean the third party they're going to sell to is going to be an affordable housing provider, the social landlord?
In most instances, Bellway partner with a third party. So Paradigm, the site that we discussed under agenda item 6, are a affordable housing provider. Now, the site next door is being developed by Paradigm, so it's slightly different. But in this instance, you may find that it's a company such as Paradigm who will seek to take the nominations and the affordable housing units in conjunction with Bellway, but Bellway remain the main managing agent or owner of the wider site.
Right. So this is to facilitate the transmission of the properties to a social landlord who will then manage them as affordable housing. Is my understanding correct?
I believe so. We already have that agreement in the original application and the original legal agreement. However, it is my understanding that there is some technical inaccuracy in the wording which requires it to be varied, and that's why we've seen so many of them. We also have a number of these deeds of variation coming through because we have some social landlords changing. So Guinness has been taken over by a different trust. So this won't be the last one that you see. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. In that case, then I would like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Before we move forward, I've got Councillor Tuckwell held. I've also got Councillor Morse indicating. So I'll take Councillor Tuckwell first, and then I'll do Councillor Morse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to come in and second the proposal if it's been moved by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Morse, can I just come to you now?
My query is essentially what seems to have changed is the council, if somebody owns some of the property under a mortgage and it defaults for any reason, we get 12 weeks to actually have a choice of purchasing it. That's the council. And the change in the wording is any person appointed under any security documentation. Would the legal officer explain what that change means? Because I don't completely understand.
Glenn, can you come in and help us?
Chairman, I didn't hear everything Councillor Moore said there.
Okay. I am actually, hang on, I'm still live. If you go to page 51,
okay.
It says 3.2 right at the bottom, and then it talks on the second line, and this is the change I've seen in the documentation, or any person appointed under any security documentation. That appears to be the change. What does that mean?
That would be where, in the event of a property being repossessed because of a mortgage default, it would protect the position of the third party. Let's say, so that would enable the third party then to exercise rights over the property without, but as was previously mentioned, that wouldn't affect the quantum or the management of the affordable housing.
Okay.
It's one of these very technical areas of mortgage law that just now needs to be incorporated in Section 106 agreements.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are proposed and seconded. I've got no other hands that I can see on the screen unless Neil tells me otherwise. I shall move this one to the vote. Councillor Tuckwell was a seconder. Councillor Duncan proposed. So can I go to Councillor Morgan, please?
4.
Councillor Morse?
4.
Councillor Higgins?
4.
Councillor Melvin?
4, Chairman.
Councillor Hagger?
4, Chairman.
Councillor Sansapuri?
4, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's all councillors voting for, so that one's carried. You confirm, Neil?
Confirm, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to agenda item 8, which is 276 Bath Road, Heathrow. This is another amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Agenda item 8 is 276 Bath Road at Heathrow. So the application site is shown here in red. Now the application is again for a variation to the original planning permission, which granted consent for a 623 bedroom hotel. If I take you through the plans, this is the location plan, the existing site plan, existing elevations, the landscape plan, proposed block plan. Now, this proposed block plan does indicate in this area to the rear where the change is. We are moving from a surface level car park to a multi-storey car park on this site, and there is the delivery of a second hotel within the development. Now, this element of the scheme has already been approved. This application is to vary the original planning application for this hotel to the south in order to facilitate a multi-storey car park, primarily because the original scheme had surface level car parking. If I take you through to the bird's eye view, I can now show you the Southern Hotel, which was implemented and has now been completed. So that's the application before us. It's seeking to vary this permission, but the building is already built and operational. So here is the Holiday Inn Hotel on the Bath Road. And if I point, so this area in the distance will be the location of the multi-storey car park to serve the new hotel and this existing hotel. Now, the application has been before members on the 24th of October 2018, and it was resolved to be approved, again subject to a deed of variation. However, prior to the completion of the legal agreement, the Court of Appeal ruling resulted in the need to reassess and reconsult on the proposals. This has now been done. The application before members today is in all other respects the same as previously presented and resolved to be approved. We do wish to make one verbal update that in the period of time that has elapsed from 2018 to today, the building has obviously been erected and is operational. So a number of the conditions have been discharged. So we would like to ask for members to agree that we amend the conditions that are in your in the officer report to allow them to be amended to be compliance conditions, rather than asking for all of those details to come back for the council's consideration. Other than that, the application is recommended for approval, and I will stop sharing the presentation and hand back to Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mandip. There's also an addendum on this one as well, which is basically will be described as housekeeping, I think, by officers. Who wants to start me off on this one? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. The only query I had was about electric charging points, because it's normally part of the standard condition, and I don't know whether it was me not reading thoroughly enough, but I didn't see this in the conditions. So it was just a check on that point, please. Otherwise, I'm happy with it and happy to propose it.
Mandy?
Yes, that was very well picked up, Councillor Duncan. Now, because the building is now operational, the electric vehicle charging points, which would normally be a condition, has actually moved into the legal agreement to ensure it's complied with. So on page 61, electric vehicle charging points and a car parking management strategy to serve both hotels in the future multi-storey car park has been included in the legal obligations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan, and then Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to propose that we go with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Tuckwell.
No, I was going to echo that, so no need for any further comment.
Okay, so we are proposed and seconded. Unless anybody else indicates, and I can't see anyone on screen. No, good. And Neil is also nodding at me, so that's good. Councillor Tuckwell.
For.
Councillor Duncan proposed. Councillor Duncan and Councillor Morgan proposed and seconded. Councillor Morse.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Melvin.
Yes, for, Chairman.
Councillor Hagger.
For, Chairman.
Councillor Sansapuri.
For, Chairman.
All members voting for, so that one is carried. Agreed, Neil?
Agreed, Chairman.
I will now move to agenda item 9, and this is the first this is actually a new one for you tonight. Former Sipson Garden Centre, Sipson Road, Sipson. Mandip, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 9, for members' information, does have an agenda item, an addendum, which primarily provides some clarification from the officer report. We do also wish to offer our apologies because 2 plans were included within your plan packs, which have actually been superseded. That may have led to an element of confusion. So I'd like to just run through the plans and help to assist in understanding what the proposals are. The addendum deals with which plans have been superseded, but the plans that I'm going to run through now will also show which ones have been omitted. The application seeks planning permission for the reinstatement of the garden centre use at the application site for outdoor sales, indoor sales, car parking, and some landscaping works. I just wish to clarify that the application does not propose to provide a new community centre on the site. The original planning application did propose a community centre. However, there was deemed to be a few objections with regard to the community facility, not about the principle of providing something for the community. It was primarily because the land is all within the green belt. I don't know if there we go. The application site is all within the green belt. So there are a certain quantum of existing buildings which are demarcated here on the application site, which formed the former garden centre. The provision of a new community centre facility, which would have been on the road frontage, is additional floor area that needs to provide special circumstances. Now, there is an existing community facility within Sipson, and the proposed community facility as part of this application had no dedicated car parking. For those reasons, it was felt that it was contrary to policy, and therefore we asked the applicants to reconsider the inclusion of the community facility, albeit it was supported by local residents. The applicants were agreeable. The GLA have raised objections to the community centre building, primarily being additional built form in the Greenbelt, which doesn't have special circumstances to be delivered because there is an existing facility. For that reason, it is no longer part of the proposal. So the proposals are simply for the reinstatement of a new garden centre facility. I take you through the plans. So these are the existing plans, which show some of the areas that were formerly developed. These are the existing and proposed building plans and elevations. Now, the proposed elevations at the bottom show the outline of the existing size and scale of buildings in red. So we have tried as hard as possible to try and minimise the size. So the heights have been reduced as part of this application. The overall building size has also been reduced as part of this application in order to make sure that the impact on the Greenbelt was limited and tried to reflect the quantum that was previously on the application site. These are the existing buildings on the site. So they're shown in the site location plan in the top right-hand corner here. This is the proposed site plan. So you can see the main areas of building are centrally located where the existing buildings are. The green area is not garden centre use. It is land that is retained as open greenbelt land and will not be part of the garden centre facility itself. The garden centre will be served by a car parking area at the frontage of the site. The number of car parking spaces provided is identical to that which was provided on the old garden centre proposal. It is not proposed to be increased, and essentially it is supported that there's no increase because we are in an air quality management area. You can also see, hopefully, that there is a turning circle area in the centre of the site to demonstrate that the large vehicles that normally serve the garden centre facilities can be accommodated within the site. This is the proposed floor plan. Now we have imposed planning conditions to limit the number of, the operating hours of the garden centre, as well as limiting the quantum of non-garden centre uses. So you find that there are some garden centres which are primarily for the sale of plants, and other garden centres which have cafes and restaurants and possibly retail units within them. We obviously want to retain all of our retail within our town centres, so for that reason we have imposed a condition that no more than 25% of the floor area will be for non-garden centre uses. So that includes things like a cafe here, and then there is a small butcher's. If I take you through to the bird's eye view, we have some photographs of the former garden centre, not looking so pretty at the moment. As it's located in the Greenbelt, we feel that the reduction in the size of the building that we have managed to negotiate, and also the removal of the community facility and the reduction in the height of the proposed building, the application does not have a detrimental impact on the Greenbelt. And subject to referral back to the Mayor of London, the application is recommended for approval. I will hand back to Councillor Lavery.
Who wants to start me off on this one? Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Morse, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for clarifying the issue with the community centre. So that clears up that particular point. Just a couple of points from me really. In relation to, I mean, I welcome these type of schemes. It's regenerating a former garden centre, and it's to be welcomed and appears to be very popular amongst local residents. Again, thank you for clarifying the issue around the cafe. So that's good. Just for me, condition 4 talks about opening times, but do we want to be adding anything in there around bank holidays? Because they tend to be very popular times for garden centres. That was my first point. The second point was around the delivery plans. You know, are we going to be putting anything to restrict when this place can be serviced, you know, through large lorries and the like? And the final point for me really was around, there's a mention on page 122 of a fence. I was just wondering whether or not we need to be just putting something in there to make sure that it is compliant with the green space. I know there's a condition, I think it's condition 11 talks about that, but do we need to be strengthening that one a little bit just to protect the green space there? And those are the points from me, Mr. Chairman.
Mandip, could you come back on those, please?
I can. Now, the hours of operation, we are, I guess, quite close to residential property, so we could limit bank holidays to be the same as Sundays. So for 9 to 5 opening, if that's acceptable. Okay, I'm getting a nod, so we'll change that to 11.
I see a number of nods on screen, so could we amend that in condition 4, please? Yeah.
9 to 5. With regard to a delivery plan, I am surprised that it's not a condition, so we can add our standard delivery and servicing plan condition requirement, which would not be any, which hopefully would not be any more onerous than the condition number 4. But if you wish to have something more restrictive, then I guess now is the time to do that. In terms of the final point on condition on boundary fencing, it is normally controlled by condition number 11, and we do consult with our green spaces team, who would then comment on whether the quality was acceptable. Normally in the greenbelt, we do prefer the green wire mesh fencing, so we could actually add in an informative to say that that's what we expect to see as a discharge for condition 11.
Okay.
I think that sounds sensible. On the delivery plan, this is next to the Holiday Inn, isn't it? So it's just on the edge of the village. I'll see how members feel and whether we restrict hours on that delivery plan, but I think a delivery plan would be helpful.
Chairman, if I could just come back to clarify the point there. I mean, I think what I'd want to do is safeguard residents from sort of very early morning deliveries of turf or whatever tends to come on larger vehicles. So I just want to sort of safeguard residents against any early morning or late night disruptions.
Thank you. I think that to me would make sense, but we'll take the sense of the meeting as we develop. Councillor Morse was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only comments I'd like to say is that if officers hadn't restricted the height and had allowed the car park to expand, I would have voted against it, because I don't think we'd have been affording with the National PPF Policy 145, Section G. However, I think this is a welcome development in the present environment, so I'm in favour, and I would accept that delivery, we should put some limitations on delivery times. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my concern was about the hours of operation. That's already been covered, so I would support a restriction on the hours and also on the delivery in case there are large vehicles, as Councillor Tuckwell has already said, and I would move it on that basis.
Okay, I've got Councillor Higgins has just indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just a quick thing. The rest of the green belt, do we know what it is? It access to the general public, or is it ownership under them?
Sorry, Councillor Higgins, I believe that the rest of the greenbelt land is owned by the garden centre, so that's indicated by the red line that we've been provided by the applicants. I don't believe it to be publicly accessible, and that would primarily be a positive thing, otherwise it would cause significant management issues for the future garden centre, and also for the residents who join the site. Thank you.
But surely we would like to know what they intend to do with it. I mean, what are they going to plant some trees, or are they going to, you know, is it something that, because it doesn't look in such a good shape at the moment, does it?
Sorry about that, I lost my cursor.
That's right.
Yes, so the plans do show, so the proposed site plan does show additional planting along the boundary fence, so the boundary fence that we discussed earlier, in order to shield and mitigate.
Admiring Councillor Duncan's consistently thing about air pollution and stuff like that, and this being an area that, can we ask them to make sure that the trees or some shrubbery on that green belt helps that situation?
Councillor Higgins, if you look at 1C of condition 11,
yeah,
it's covered. I had checked it because I knew somebody would raise it. I had checked.
On that note, I'll second it.
Okay. I can't see anybody else indicating. No, I don't think anybody else is done. So we're moved and seconded. I will now take it to the vote. Councillor Tuckwell.
For, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duncan was the mover. Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Morse. Councillor Morse. Neil, are you hearing anything?
It appears. Oh, there he is. He's just giving it voice.
Councillor Higgins seconded. Councillor Melvin.
Yes, for, Chairman.
Councillor Hager.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Sansapuri.
For, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's all councillors voting for, so that one's approved. You agree, Neil?
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to agenda item 10. Before the officer starts on agenda item 10, agenda item 10 and agenda item 11 are new to major applications because they're applications which take us on a site above the 10 units, but the slightly smaller versions of them have been approved by North Planning Committee. So bear that in mind in your deliberations, because that does restrict your abilities. Obviously, we're looking at the changes. The principles of the buildings have already largely been agreed. Mandic, can I pass to you, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. So as Councillor Levy mentioned, agenda item 10 does have an addendum, and that's primarily condition changes, and that was to ensure that they were complete and accurate as imposed. There is also some sort of alignment between agenda item 10's conditions and agenda item 11. The sites are next door to each other, so they should have been covered initially. So I apologise for that. This is the red line boundary is shown on this constraints plan. So the red line here is number 15 Green Lane, and we have the London School of Theology. Where I'm trying to point it out in red. Now, the next item on the agenda is land to the east of the London School of Theology and comprises this parcel of land here. The application, as I've just mentioned, seeks permission for the erection of 12 residential units on the site with 16 car parking spaces. As Councillor Lavery mentioned, it's important to note that the site already benefits from planning permission for 9 residential units, which is in a very similar layout to this building. The following slides show the proposed and existing street scenes, and we have the existing floor plans. So the unit at the moment is a very modest development set within substantial grounds, and we have granted planning permission for 9 units on the site. There is a basement to provide car parking. We do have a basement impact assessment condition seeking to ensure that the development is built with flooding and drainage in mind, although it is a substantial plot, so the concerns that normally arise are not envisaged to take place on this particular development site. I take you through the ground floor plans as proposed and the first floor plans, and then there are 2 units within the second floor of this building, so the roof. And this is the roof plan, which shows a few dormers, but predominantly roof lights on the east and west elevations. The next plans are the front and side elevations as proposed. and the rear and side elevations as proposed. I thought it would be useful. I know some people find this helpful, some people find it more confusing, to provide a comparison of the front elevation. So the bottom image shows the approved front elevation and the top shows the proposed. So you can see the primary area of change is the infilling of the area on the eastern side of the site. There is an increase in width, which is only barely noticeable on the western part of the site, but that does accommodate for additional dormers at roof level and then the additional accommodation which has been provided within the site. This is a comparison of the east elevation. So we have the approved east elevation, which had a almost cat slide roof, was served primarily with roof lights and this one window which was serving a non-habitable room. We are now moving to a more uniform design to match the western side of the building. So we only have roof lights serving non-habitable rooms at roof level. These two rooms serve, again, non-habitable rooms. One is a bathroom and I believe the other is a kitchen, and both have been conditioned to be obscure glazed. And the primary reason for this is that this side of the building looks over onto Aldis Hall, which is located to the east of the site. We have a comparison of the rear elevations. So you can see where the additional built form has allowed for the additional accommodation within the development. But overall, the built form is not substantially greater than previously approved. And then we have the western elevations, which is not changing substantially. There is changes to the window alignments, and that's to accommodate the shift in the unit internal rearrangements. We take you through to some photographs of the site. So this is the existing building, and work has not yet commenced on this application site as far as I'm aware. These are some more images of the proposal. We have sought to secure planning obligations on this application site, which are all set out within the report. I've already noted that there is very limited impact on the street scene. The building is set quite far back from the application site. We have mitigated any potential harm in terms of loss of privacy by virtue of obscure glazing windows and internally rearranging some of the units to ensure there is no overlooking to Aldis Hall. And the leave agreement does secure the application to be in accordance with the proposals that we need. So energy is being secured. We have secured affordable housing on site. I'm not sure if one of the plans I showed had the affordable housing units, but I think they were on the second floor. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval, and I will hand back to Councillor Lavery.
Who wants to start me off on this one? Councillor Melvin, then Councillor Duncan.
Yes, I don't have a problem with this one at all. Obviously, I know the site quite well. It's within Northwood. And in fact, looking at the changes in the building, I think it looks better now than it did before. So I'm quite happy to agree propose this one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Melvin. Councillor, memory's gone for a second. Councillor Duncan, did you indicate?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the plans, in our plan book, we have the site plan, which is on page 297, and it shows the building as extended coming so close to the red line boundary. And I just wanted to ask, how close to the boundary is this? Because if I understood the presentation, it's maybe this side that there is the large cat slide roof, if I understood that, on the eastern side. And you will need to be able to get scaffolding for any sort of roof repairs, loose tiles, if there are storms or anything like that. So on the rest of the building, one could easily obtain access for maintenance and repair purposes. But this seems to be very, very close. I wonder if you could just tell us what that distance is, please, Mandip. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Duncan. Now, I cannot tell you exactly what that distance is. I'm really sorry, I don't have a scale rule with me at the moment. I can confirm that the building is moving no closer to the boundary than was previously approved. and therefore there is very little we can do. I appreciate that scaffolding and party wall matters will be something for the applicants to address with the owners of whether Aldis Hall, which is the site next door, should that ever become a problem. I will go through the committee report in case you have any other questions in order to see if there is a distance to the boundary though.
How close is it to the building next door as well?
To the building next door, I believe it's 19 point something meters. It breaches the 21 meter separation distance, hence the reason that we have only allowed obscure glazed and non-habitable windows on the eastern elevation facing into Aldis House and also the gardens of Aldis House, because otherwise that would have an impact on their privacy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. I tend to agree with Councillor Duncan on this. All in all, I don't really have a problem with it, but I think the reason that slope roof was there was to minimise the effect of over dominance on a boundary line. It gives it a shed more light on that side. But I can see on the other hand that our hands are slightly tied, but I do have sympathy actually with this. I think that there is I personally thought that the first design was maybe not as nice, but was very sympathetic to the area that it was built in. I don't know whether we can do anything about this, but you know, that's just my opinion, and I will second it if it goes forward.
Mandy, we are effectively our hands tied by the previous commission. It's not a significant enough change for us to be able to look at it again.
I don't believe so. One of the things that happened about 2 weeks ago was that we noticed that there was a habitable room window directly overlooking Aldis Hall. Now, at that point, because the overbearing and harm was felt to be on balance acceptable, we negotiated that turned into a non-habitable room, and that flat got smaller in order to protect the privacy and the amenity of Aldis Hall. Now, Aldis Hall is 18.9 metres away from the development. So in terms of the 21 metre separation distance, it is very close to meeting the privacy requirements, but it doesn't actually have to meet them because they're all serving non-habitable room windows. So I don't think we'd be successful if we were to refuse on those grounds. Thank you.
James, do you want to add a comment to that just before I move this forward?
I don't actually, in this case, if anything to add to what Mandip said. I agree with everything that Mandip has said thus far.
Okay, thank you, James. I think we are concerns noted, but I think we are where we are. I am proposed and seconded on this one, so unless anybody else wants to come in, I will take the vote. Okay, Councillor Tuckwell.
4.
Councillor Duncan.
4.
Councillor Morgan.
4.
Councillor Morse.
4.
Councillor Higgins was a seconder. Councillor Melbourne was proposer. Councillor Hagger.
4.
Councillor Sansapuri.
4.
That's unanimously 4, so that one's approved. Agreed, Neil?
Yes, agreed, Chairman.
Okay, I move to the London School of Theology, Green Lane, Northwood, which we already now know is the site behind the one we were last looking at.
That's right. Thank you ever so much, Chairman. So we have agenda item number 9, which is in your agenda plan packs called the London School of Theology, but I do want to clarify because we have received comments from the London School of Theology themselves, noting that they obviously disposed of the site some time ago and it's no longer actually part of the school. The officers will be looking at getting the address formally changed to land to the east of London School of Theology to avoid any confusion. But I can confirm that we have done the correct public consultation and the School of Theology were notified, even though the address of the application site is the same. The agenda item does also have an addendum, which is primarily condition changes, as we mentioned, to bring them in alignment with the previous agenda item. We As I mentioned before, the application is located on Green Lane, so to the north of 15 Green Lane, which we just heard under agenda item 10. The following slides show the proposed site layout, and again, this application is for 15 residential units served by 24 car parking spaces. The 24 spaces are located partially within the basement and partly at ground floor level. If I take you back 2 slides, the ground floor parking is shown here. So vehicular access is gained from the south of Green Lane into the site along a drive. So this is Aldis Hall that we were talking about previously. The vehicles drive down past Aldis Hall and then they reach either the surface level car parking or the basement car parking. The following, this is the ground floor plan. And as I mentioned in the past, this application site does actually have planning permission for 12 residential units. And so this application is increasing the quantum by 3 residential units. So this is the plan of the affordable housing, which is being proposed to be delivered on site, which is a positive because lots of these smaller developments aren't always able to provide on-site affordable housing, but we have managed to secure 2 units. This is the second floor plan. Here we have the front and the side proposed elevations, the rear and the side elevations, and this demonstrates the 25-degree daylight sunlight test on the adjoining residential properties. Again, I've tried to do a comparison. So this was the bottom images show the approved front elevation, and the top image shows the proposed elevation. So you can see the addition of a dormer window in this area here, and that would facilitate the additional accommodation. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but there's also an additional window on the top floor, which again provides additional accommodation within the development over and above what was approved before. This is a comparison of the east elevations. So again, we can see that there is an additional dormer here that we saw on the previous front elevation as an additional element of the scheme. This is the approved and then proposed rear elevation, which doesn't have significant change except for that dormer that we just mentioned here. And then this is the western elevation, which has the inclusion of additional roof lights or displaced roof lights and a dormer window. We have ensured that all of the additional fenestration either has an outlook away from other residential units in order to ensure the privacy is the same as the consented scheme and there is no impact on the residential neighbours surrounding the site. I'll take you through to some photos of the application site. So these are the existing buildings on site, the existing car park and side boundaries, the existing car park towards Green Lane. Accordingly, the application has been recommended for approval. We have managed to secure affordable housing, which has taken some time to negotiate, but I think it's a positive outcome when the scheme is only delivering a fairly small development. Thank you very much, Chairman. I will stop sharing and hand back to you.
Chairman,
We can't hear you.
Councillor Avery, you need to unmute yourself.
My fault. I just draw members' attention to the addendum because there are the condition changes are largely to tie them up with so that they're similar to the previous application. Right. Any hands on this one? Councillor Higgins, Councillor Hagger, Councillor Tuckwell, sorry, and then Councillor Duncan. Oh, it's popular this one. Councillor Higgins, you could start.
Yeah, again, we're in the same sort of position as we were before in the last one, really. My only question here really is, I mean, it's great that we've got affordable housing in Northwood. I think it must be a rarity in itself. So on balance here, I would propose this forward. My only question I have, Amanda, is that with the application that we've just passed and this one, there is no conflict there. If the officers can recommend that, I will propose this forward.
When we're saying conflict, we mean privacy distances and overlooking. Yes, no, there are no impacts. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hagger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If that's the proposal, I'd like to second that. I think it's, again, it's already set in anyway. Great that we've managed to secure 2 units that are affordable. Always good to hear that. So I would second that.
Okay, Councillor Tuckwell. James, I know, I think you're indicating, but I'll come to you in a moment.
No, I mean, our hands are tied on this one to a degree. I think they've done a good job to get the affordable housing, and if I'm right, we're also getting three-bedroom apartments as well. So that's always a good news story as well. So yeah, nothing to add if it's been on top of what my colleagues have already said.
Thank you. I'll just go to James Roger first, and then I'll come to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I was just looking at the section 1.6 heads of terms, and it doesn't have construction training, unless I've. Whereas the previous application did have our normal construction training head of term.
That's interesting.
So,
you want to add that?
So I don't think it's in the addendum unless Mandip corrects me. So yes, it's just, as you know, Chairman, sometimes as we talk through these, I spot something, and I just wanted to come in before members voted on it. But I think we should add our usual construction training head of term. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, yeah, okay, I would agree that. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. Really, just the same point I made on the other property on Green Lane. If we look at the southern boundary, I know it's stepped down, but it's very close. And if we compare it with the car parking spaces just to the east of it, it looks as if there may only be something like about a 1 metre distance. And I think it is something to consider, that how close we are to boundaries in applications, because we do want them to be able to be maintained and repaired safely. But on the whole, it's a good scheme. It provides good housing in Northwood and has the advantage, as everyone has said, of affordable units in it. So yes, I'm very much for it. Thank you.
Okay, I am proposed and seconded on this one. So we are voting on this one, subject obviously to the addendum and the change to the head of term requested by the head of planning to include construction management training. Councillor Tuckwell.
For.
Councillor Duncan.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Morse.
For.
Councillor Higgins was a proposer. Councillor Melvin.
Yes, I'm for this one. Yeah.
Councillor Hagger was a seconder. Councillor Sansapuri.
For, Mr. Chairman.
That's all members voting for, so that one's approved. Agreed, Neil?
Agreed, Chairman.
Well, I now move to agenda item 12, which I notice is a 1.5 metre boundary fence. Do members want a presentation on this one before the officer? Does anybody shout now if you want a presentation? You got a illustrative view up on your screen. I'm not hearing any noise. So could I switch, Mandip? Could we just switch back?
Mr. Chairman, I was trying to wave at you, but
I can't see you.
Just a brief one, because I wasn't involved in this previously.
Nobody was, I don't think. Nobody was.
If I take you through agenda item 12, it is very brief. We are required, because the application site is within the Greenbelt, so you can see the annotation here that the site is within the Greenbelt and it's council owned, to bring this application before members for determination. But as Councillor Lavery mentioned, this is a very small scale proposal to erect a 1.5 metre high metal fence or enclosure in order to provide demarcation between the residential private amenity areas and then the areas of public rail for members of the public to walk in and around the residential area. It is supported in all respects, primarily because it's not a timber boarded fence against the Greenbelt, so it doesn't impact upon the openness of the Greenbelt, and is recommended for approval. I will stop sharing and pass back to Councillor Lavery.
It looks very straightforward. Councillor Moore. Higgins. Councillor Moore first.
I just want to make members aware that this area here, we have quite a large open space which is has no containment, and we have quite a bit of antisocial activities such as drug dealing going on in this area. So I actually think the full away fence will be useful. I'm not so clear on the other fence, but I have no reason for opposing. I think it's basically we are moving in the right direction, although the flats there should have, I'm talking about the flats on Moston Close, they should have a fence around them because this is an issue with actually amenity space for the residents.
So yeah, so you're in agreement with the proposal?
Yeah, I'm in agreement, but I'm just pointing out there could be a better development in my opinion.
Well, that's not before us tonight.
That's all that's before me.
Yeah, I'd just like to propose this. It's quite straightforward. And it's a nice fence, and it's going to be green, which is good. Although I don't mind the blue, but there you go.
Councillor Tuckwell.
Happy to second that, Chairman.
I am proposing second. Councillor Duncan, can I just, you did indicate.
No, I was just going to second, Chair. That's all.
Okay. Well, I am proposing second. I could see no other faces waving at me, so I'm gonna move. Councillor Tuckwell was a second. Councillor Duncan. Are we for?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Morse.
For.
Councillor Higgins proposed it. Councillor Melvin.
Yes, I'm for that.
Councillor Hagger.
For, Chair.
Councillor Sansapori.
For, Chair.
That's all members voting for, so that one's approved. Agreed, Neil?
Agreed, Chairman.
Right, we move to agenda item 13, which is a variation to reposition the unit by 300 millimetres.
Thank you, Chairman. I am sharing the presentation with you now. I will be honest, it's very difficult to tell what the change is. Now, I believe that when the applicants got on site following their original planning permission, they realised that there was a boundary wall or a supporting wall that was thicker than they originally thought. Therefore, in order to accommodate for the build, the whole of the development along the northern side, so this is the location plan, so it's units number 3 to 7. So not these two units along the southern area, just those on the north need to shift 300 millimetres. There is no conflict, there is no loss of parking, there is no increase in height. So accordingly, the application is recommended for approval. I don't really have a lot else to say. It's under construction, so it's also facilitating jobs within the borough, within the industrial business area.
And this is an industrial area anyway. This is an industrial close. For those who don't know it, it is an industrial area. Right, Councillor Higgins.
I'd like to propose this, Chairman, please.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Morgan.
I'd like to second it. Thank you.
I'm proposing second. I'll just take Councillor Morgan if he's got anything to add. No, he hasn't. Nobody else is waving, so we will move straight to the vote. Councillor Tuckwell.
For.
Councillor Duncan seconded. Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Morse.
For.
Councillor Higgins proposed. Councillor Melvin.
Yes, I'm for this. Yes.
Councillor Hagger.
For, Chairman.
Councillor Sansapori.
For, Chairman.
That's all members voting for, so that one's approved. Agreed, Neil?
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you all very much indeed for your time, and I'll close the meeting. Very successful.
Thank you.
If members could remain muted, please, I will then stop the recording. Thank you.